This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
I'm good, Phil. I'm good. Yeah, no, it's nothing crazy, but, I'm a creature of habit. I'm basically, I don't want to call myself Bill Belichick or, Tom Coughlin time here, but, I was, I had a trip this past weekend. Listen, we're all fortunate to get to do what we do and take a little time a year, but, it was just delays and sitting on the runway, and so, I wanted to get out on Monday's show, and I didn't. Anyway, long story short, everything is great. Talked to Coach Muss about, obviously, what could be a historic next Thursday night. It is a fun time of year, especially this specific time for Hogs fans specifically, because, like I said, and like Coach Muss said with me yesterday, is that it could be a very, very special next Thursday for Arkansas fans.
Well, and your talk with Muss is all focused on the draft, pretty much, and his experiences in the draft too, because he's one of these guys that has so many different experiences in coaching in basketball, which includes being there in the draft room. And I loved how he talked about, what team was it, Atlanta? That if you were an assistant coach and you want to have any kind of influence on the draft, well, you better show up at the same time and put in the same hours as the scouts. And we know Muss is not worried about putting in hours, because he's all about putting in the hours.
I'm on with you guys. I was thinking about this. That question that always gets asked, if you could have, dinner with 5 people, who would it be and why and all that? I think Coach Muss would officially be on that list, because in basketball, anyway, I can't speak to his, he's got a story for everything. And it's even yesterday, listen, the kids are back on campus. I wanted to be respectful of those guys that are just getting acclimated in Fayetteville. I didn't want to ask too many questions about next year's team, because we got 9 months to discuss that. But why I bring it up is because even just something as simple as saying, what are the days in the lead up to the draft like? Coach Muss had 10 different stories, only one of which that he got into. And if I don't know how much time you guys get to spend around him, but, and I don't even know if this comes out in press conferences and stuff, but when you just talk to him, there's a story about everything. And it's not just one time this happened. It's one time I was in France coaching with Hubie Brown and this happened. Oh, yeah, me and Mike Fratello one time in Belgium did this. And it's the guy, I think we forget, because he's having so much success doing what he's doing now, the success that he had in the NBA for 20-plus years as a 2-time head coach. I believe he was runner-up for Coach of the Year. And then, obviously, when you coach in the NBA, there are the ancillary experiences that come with it. I think he was involved with international basketball for a while. And, of course, coming up in the CBA and the G League. And he's just got, not a story for everything. He's got, 3 or 4 stories for everything. So, like I said, maybe when he retires, if podcasts are still a thing, I can get him on for a long-form one. Because I would just like to sit there, turn on the mic for an hour or two, and just listen to stories that he's got to share. Because, like I said, it feels like he's got 2 or 3 for all of them, for everything.
Aaron, watching the NBA lately, and the bigger, taller guy that can handle the ball, his vision and decision-making, Anthony Black seems to be a guy like that. Where do you see him going in the draft?
Listen, this was one of the reasons I want to get Muss on yesterday. I can't speak to who's where on what draft board, and I think that was even something that he kind of spoke to, is that it only takes one thing to completely upend the NBA draft. But why I bring it up is because I was thinking about this, and I did an interview a few days ago. I forget where and what the context was, but you kind of it's like an age-old adage, but you kind of forget it sometimes. And I think it's coming back in vogue, which is the value of size. And I think we all, we wanted to say, okay, this is the small ball era. This is where basketball is going. Couple things. One, look at this NBA champion that we just had. You have a guy like Michael Porter that's 6'10", 6'11", that can make plays. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Jokic's size. And then I even go, and I'm not trying to rub salt in the wound for Arkansas fans, but my alma mater, UConn, winning the national championship. Their starting point guard was 6'5", 6'6". They're starting, small forward with 6'8", 6'9" that can make plays. And so this all circles back to Anthony Black because, to your point, Matt, again, I get that, it's small ball and it's new and it's sexy and it's fun to talk about. But I think a player with his size, his skill set, and frankly his intelligence, which is something Muss told me, I think we all knew it, but when you hear Muss talk about the responsibility that they gave him over the course of this season, I just think that's a guy, I think as the draft process has unfolded, it just feels like you hear more and more good stuff about him, and I'm not surprised at all that you are because of the talent, the intangibles, but then also the tangibles, your point about the size and everything like that.
Well, then there's also the idea, and this is something you hit on with Muss, that in a day of sports specialization amongst youths, and maybe specifically basketball players aside from all the other sports, he's been a full-time only basketball player for only like a year and a half, if that.
Yeah.
He was playing football before. Muss touched on that he played soccer. So if there's room to improve, it's like, well, he's only now just been a full-time basketball player and decided that's exactly what he's going to focus on. And there's so much that's already there that, man, you could understand why he might move up. I mean, I see him slotted 7th to the Wizards in a lot of the mock drafts I've seen, but just based on what I just hit on, it would seem to me that maybe he might go a little earlier.
Yeah, Phil, it's interesting. I think in the world that we live in, it's very rare that, something gets undercovered. I think, Anthony Black being a high-level football player, essentially, as you just said, until his senior year of high school, I think that's sort of under-discussed. Again, and I said this to Coach yesterday, is I don't think it's fair to say he's new to basketball, say a foreign player that maybe, never touched the basketball till they were 14, 15, 16 years old. But I think he is relatively new to basketball from that exact perspective is, listen, I was never fortunate enough to play at the college level, but even playing at the high school level, to be the kind of recruit that he was, and he was a wide receiver recruit that had offers from Baylor and TCU and most of the Big 12 and some of the SEC, that takes a lot of time and a lot of time, frankly, away from the sport that he has now focused on at 18, 19 years old. So, I actually think it's a little underreported is that this, like you said, Phil, this isn't a guy that's been playing year-round basketball since he was 12, 13 years old, and even at 18 and 19, maybe is somewhere close to his ceiling. I think this kid's only, assuming he puts in the work and all that, and it sounds like he's that kind of kid that will, I think he's going to take major leaps over these next 2 to 3 years as, again, focus can be his, or basketball can be his primary focus. He's one guy, I'm not saying it because I'm on his page, Bill. I'm really excited to follow his career because I really do feel I know it sounds cliche, but I really do feel like he's just starting to scratch the surface of his capabilities.
How is Nick Smith, the other first rounder? I think Arkansas is going to definitely have 2 in the first round, and it seems like Jordan Walsh is kind of going up the draft. But Nick Smith, it's all about his health. How healthy is he?
I mean, it sounds promising. To your guys' point, we can only go off what we're reading in mock drafts and what people are saying. But, you want to bet on talent and you want to bet on upside. He's it, right? He was literally the number 1 high school player in the class. The guys that the NBA people love, Brandon Miller, Anthony Black, Cason Wallace from Kentucky, whoever, Nick Smith was literally rated ahead of all of them. And, I will say selfishly, I'm bummed that he just wasn't healthy for the sake of being healthy, but I'm just bummed that we didn't get a chance to see what he was capable of at the college level, not because, it promised Arkansas this or promised Arkansas. It's just, you just want to see the best players try, getting somewhere close to their potential. And so, the way it unfolded, and I know we talked about this at the time, but let's be honest, I give him credit for even coming back, right? It would have been easy for him to say, I think I'm this high in the draft and I can only hurt myself by coming back. So I know we talked about this again in February and January and all that, but I give him credit for deciding to come back. I'm also bummed that even when he did come back, it was clear that he was nowhere near the guy that he was in high school, and then kind of roles had been established and all that stuff. So he's another one. I can't wait until a couple weeks to see him in Summer League. And then again, obviously, I can't wait to see things develop over the next 3, 4, 5, hopefully much more than that, years in the NBA.
Last thing, and we'll let you go, AT. And this is about other team in the SEC. So Calipari has started an NIL group called the Familia Club. It's like, of course, it has to have an Italian bent to it if it's Calipari. How is this any different from anything else that has happened? Because we've read about, that they haven't necessarily had their NIL quote-unquote ducks lined up. Is this part of lining the ducks up?
I think it's a combination of things. I think one, listen, I think, Cal, and I think, listen, this is something that a lot of people have talked about. Deion Sanders talked about it this week. Nick Saban, you go back to the Nick Saban frustration of Texas A&M. He was kind of frustrated with the collective structure, if you will, that it isn't hey, if you play well, Motorola may call you and want you to be in a commercial. Well, that's great for Kentucky because you have super high-level players that everybody knows. But for everybody else, we got to make sure to take care of our athletes. So I bring it up because Calipari was really hesitant to jump into the collective-type culture. But I think he also, and I guess we sort of have to give him credit for this, he basically said, look, I'm losing good transfers because we don't have a collective set up. And so I think he's doing it his own Calipari way with his own Calipari twist. I think what he would say is different is, one, it's a lot of former NBA players who are donating, and, it allows, I think, his current players to have access to some of his former players in maybe ways that they didn't before. And I think what he would just say is, everything's on the up and up, everything's been cleared by the NCAA, all that good stuff. But it's a collective, and I think it's stemming from the stuff that I think we've kind of mentioned, at least in passing a couple times over the summer, which is it's been a disaster for them, and they are almost certainly going to go into next season with essentially 8 or 9 freshmen in a year where college basketball will probably be the oldest it's ever been with all of the 5th and 6th year guys because of the COVID year. So I just bring all this up to say, in some ways we have to give him credit for, doing what needed to be done. But on the other hand, it came at the, I don't want to say it came at the expense of the 2023-2024 season. I just know they're almost certainly going to have the youngest team in college basketball in a year where college basketball has never been older, and in a year where it goes without saying, not only Arkansas, but Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, all these schools did great in the transfer portal, took advantage of the modern era. Kentucky, to use I don't know if it's an appropriate term, but kind of got caught with their pants down, and now they're kind of just trying to play catch-up from here. But I think, like I said, it's going to be too little too late for 2023, 2024. And if he has another bad year, then that's a separate conversation altogether. But it's interesting times over there for sure. And to your point, Phil, yes, he finally got in the collective game probably about 18 months after he probably needed to.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your championship finals info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and the latest matchup reports for this year's NBA and Stanley Cup Finals. BetOnline is your sports intel headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your insider sports wagering needs, from baseball and hockey to MLB, UFC, and boxing. The fastest and easiest way to get all your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your home. Get in the action today. Head over to our website or use your mobile device to join, and be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive 50% bonus on your first deposit. That's BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts.